Next item of business is communications.
All right, I do have a few things. First, you'll notice to my left, Pamela's not there, as you know, that she went on to the city of San Bruno, is now their city attorney. Robert Lanzone, Bob Lanzone, is our interim city attorney. He comes with decades of experience within San Mateo County. I, in fact, worked with him when I was a planner in San Carlos about 10 years ago. So he's here. He'll be serving as an as-needed basis at the planning commissions, and he's in City Hall for about 2 days a week. Also within communications, people at home, you can find the e-packets at sanbruno.ca.gov under the community development section. The packets there, staff reports, minutes. And finally, we inadvertently left off a presentation tonight. Housing Leadership, Chris Moore from Housing Leadership Council is here. It's a great group locally that promote housing issues and affordable housing issues within San Mateo County. I've been fortunate enough to participate in a couple events that they've had recently, and Chris will give a presentation of some of the stuff that they're up to.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Welcome, Chris.
I'm Chris Moore, Executive Director of the Housing Leadership Council of San Mateo County, a 501c3 nonprofit organization headquartered next door in South San Francisco. And we have been working for several years on our platform of policies that encourage housing development to help serve our community's needs. And we decided we've spent all this time crafting the wording of our policies. We'd like to get out to policymakers and just let you know. So just briefly about us. We were founded in 2001, and our mission is to accelerate the creation of housing at all affordability levels to increase opportunity and create a great quality of life here in San Mateo County. I took the liberty of taking a groundbreaking from the Habitat for Humanity development in Daly City just 2 months ago and showing the village at the crossing here in San Bruno. We want to see good projects come to life. And for us, it's not just about quantity, although we believe we need more homes on the peninsula, but it's also about quality and creating livable, walkable communities. And so some of the things we do are to organize our membership base of about 100 organizations and about 40 to 50 individuals who also care about the issue, recruit and train local leaders, and promote the kind of quality development we want to see. We also have a couple of events I want to mention. Housing Leadership Day is our annual policy conference. It's coming up October 15th. We'll be at the Oracle Corporation Conference Center in Redwood Shores, and we'll be sending out invitations to that shortly. We also provide staffing to the Housing Endowment and Regional Trust, HART, which is the county's housing trust fund. It's a joint powers agreement, and all 20 cities, including San Bruno, as well as the county, are members. And that entity helped provide some of the financing for the village at the crossing. And we also have a home buyer program. Our next newsletter is going to feature one of the home buyers who was able to purchase a house next to his parents' house here in San Bruno, where he grew up. He works in South San Francisco for a biotech company, so he's able to stay here where he grew up in the community that he knows and loves near family and not have to commute a long distance. We also endorse developments that meet our criteria and advance our vision. So I've provided copies of the full wording of our platform to the commission if you want to go through those at your leisure. I'll just briefly summarize these things for these purposes right now. One of our goals is to encourage mixed income housing, and just a couple years ago, San Bruno passed an inclusionary housing ordinance requiring a certain portion of new units created be set aside at slightly lower rates for middle and lower income families. Where appropriate, we believe that single room occupancy, the smaller type of units, is an appropriate use, especially in denser downtown areas. And we believe each jurisdiction has a responsibility to try and meet its fair share of the regional need for housing, as determined by the State of California and Association of Bay Area Governments. And the last time that I heard, Bay Area Council gave San Bruno an A+ a couple years ago because of all the good work you've been doing, especially with the Crossings Master Plan. You've really been a leader in the peninsula for that. We support accessibility of housing for disabled people and making sure that design makes those units available and accessible to people with physical challenges. Childcare is an important need for families in our community, and so jurisdictions should do what they can to make sure that the supply of childcare matches the demand, especially if we're adding housing units. Sometimes there's a bit of a conflict between housing preferences and housing programs versus fair housing law, which is federal law, mandating equal treatment for people in the housing market. And so we just ask jurisdictions when they craft their policies, if they're, for the inclusionary units or below market units, if there are local preferences, that you make sure that they comply with the federal law and make sure everybody has a chance. And then we also support good employment standards for the people who build the housing so that they can be paid prevailing wages with decent benefits in accordance with established local area standards so that they have a chance to live in this community as well. Where possible, we like to see jurisdictions investing in affordable homes, especially if they have redevelopment, and obviously that has been the case here. Commercial linkage fees are a way that some jurisdictions have of addressing the need for housing created by new job growth, and we want to keep the economy vibrant and get back on track with job growth. And when we do, of course, that creates demand for housing. And some jurisdictions have adopted a fee on commercial development that helps mitigate the impact on the housing market. Around land use tax policy, as policymakers, you know how unbalanced state and local fiscal relationships have been. We support Proposition 22, the League of Cities measure that would prevent the state from raiding redevelopment agency funds. And we encourage cities to get involved on that and other measures as well. In terms of regionalism, so we're a nonprofit with a brief to work across all of San Mateo County, and this county actually has a really good practice of collaboration and cooperation, starting with the City-County Association of Governments, working on transportation policy, and in the last couple of years, working on the housing element and the sub-regional approach to the regional housing need allocation, and the 21 elements collaboration, I think, has been an effective way to leverage public resources. And just today, in fact, there was a tour that the 21 elements collaboration organized. I understand Mr. Ackman went on it, and my colleague Josh Hugg from Housing Leadership Council went on it. And they visited the different homeless shelters in the county because of a new state law that requires everybody to be able to identify places to zone for emergency shelters. I referred earlier to commercial development linkage fees, but just we encourage jurisdictions to look at the balance of jobs and housing to make sure that not all growth is concentrated in the commercial sector, but that the people who work in those jobs also have a chance to live in the community near where they work. We recently adopted a statement about our preferred pattern of development, which is around livable, walkable communities. I think that the work you're doing around the transportation corridor and the downtown plan is absolutely what we're talking about there, because you have Caltrain, you have BART, and trying to leverage that opportunity for a changing housing market where elderly folks, we had a meeting in Millbrae just the other night, and even during the introductions, one of the older participants said, we've got to do something about us older folks living up in the hills, and we can't drive as much as we used to, and we need a place to be able to go. So obviously, again, the Village at the Crossing is an example of that. As part of the housing element process, you have to identify obstacles to development, and so we encourage you to look at streamlining your processes and make it a little easier. Obviously, regulation to protect quality of life and our environment is important, but at the same time, are there other things that you can look at to improve the process? Parking requirements are a big one. We go to public hearings across the county, and always number one issue is there's not enough parking, or it's going to create traffic if you build here. But especially when you're locating closer to public transit like Caltrain or BART, study after study by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and others has shown car ownership really is lower in those areas. So I think we need to stay with the data on cases like that and see if there are times when you could reduce the parking ratio and still have a viable project. We like to see development go where the existing public infrastructure is. Obviously, we don't want to cover our beautiful hills at this point and fill in our open space, so we're looking at these more compact, livable areas. So that concludes my presentation, and I very much appreciate your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Are there any questions from Mr. Moore regarding this presentation? Thank you, sir. Are there any other communications from our planning director?
No, that is it.
Okay, thank you.